Hi everyone. So I mentioned this in my announcement, but I really want to make it clear that as I was looking at the discussion boards for Chapter 8 and Chapter 9, there were some really good ideas, but that were not necessarily following the directions, okay? So in the Chapter 8 discussion board, you were given an informative speech template that you will use for your informative speech, and you were given the Monroe's Motivated Sequence template that you will use in your persuasive speech. I want to make it very clear. Those are not options. Those are not suggestions. That is what you need to follow if you would like to get a passing grade on these speeches, okay? On the topic of speeches and things like that, like I kind of mentioned in my announcement, I gave some examples of the difference between a specific purpose statement, a thesis statement, and kind of how that will roll. I will try to find some example outlines for you, and I'll put them in an announcement next week as you start getting to work on your informative speech. But as we're looking specifically at the informative speech, I need everybody to be very clear and on the same page, and you'll kind of read this in your informative chapter, but that your informative speech should not be telling anyone to try anything. You should not be saying anything is awesome, amazing, great, horrible, bad, shouldn't do anything of that nature. Why? Because when you are telling the audience to do something, you are persuading, because that would mean that your speech is trying to convince them of something or trying to persuade them. So your informative speech might be harder than your persuasive speech because it's really difficult to not have an opinion on something, right? And that's not to say don't have an opinion, but that the informative speech is not the place for it. So your informative speech is likely going to be a history, a topical speech, or a spatial speech, right? We might do an informative speech about the distinct regions of Colorado, Fort Collins, Denver, the Springs, Pueblo, right? We might do that spatially. We're not going to say Fort Collins is better than Denver, is better than Pueblo. We're not going to make any of those persuasive claims, but we can inform our readers or our listeners in our speech about those topics. We might do a history of farming in Pueblo, right? We're not going to say this farm is better than that farm, but we can provide information and do an informative speech on those things. Does that make sense? And so, like I said, the informative speech for a lot of students is actually more difficult than the persuasive speech because usually we're being taught to make an argument, right? To make our point. But for the informative speech, I do not want your opinion. I do not want your value judgment on if something is good or bad or better or best. I only want information. I want to be informed about something. And then in week 8, we will move on to that persuasion component. One thing that I appreciated, especially in your discussion boards on introductions and conclusions, is that you all are pointing out exactly what I want to see in your speeches, right? Is that your introduction and conclusion are probably going to come last, which a lot of you acknowledged, because we want to see we want to know what's in the speech before we write something that's going to introduce it or to finish it, okay? But I want you to remember that, right? Is that for the week 9 discussion, you were watching a TED Talk from someone else, and they were following that exact same structure. They had an attention getter, they showed their credibility, they gave you a preview, they followed the exact same steps, even at those levels where 1 million, 100,000, however many people are watching that speech. So please, please, please do not overcomplicate it. Follow the outline template that you are given, okay? You also should be, as you're thinking about your informative speech, following the directions, right? Time limit is going to be super important. Time limit shows that you understand the task, that your information matches the task. The biggest problem that I see with informative and persuasive speeches in this class is people going double, triple overtime. That is not the assignment. I want you to take your topic and put it into the designated amount of time. I am not interested in you proving that you know everything about this topic. Some of you are going to be experts on your topic. Some of us might just be, learning it for the speech. I want the directions followed. So that means the outline template followed. That means the directions that I'm putting in the reminders that I'm putting in the announcements followed. That means the time limits followed. If you want to be successful, those need to be done, okay? I am more than happy to look over drafts of things, right? Your outlines, your proposal, or you don't have a proposal, but you're welcome to submit something to me if you would like some feedback on it. I'm more than happy to do that. But this, between all of the announcements and this me explicitly telling you, if you do not follow directions, your grade will not be what you want it to be. And that's kind of just perks of working from home, loud motorcycles. And that's just kind of where we're at, is that part of the college environment, part of your professional environment, and part of the expectations of this class are that you are reading the directions and following them. So I will leave it at that for right now. Again, please make sure you are reviewing my feedback on your discussion boards, especially if you're not getting 100% on them, as well as on your quizzes. And I will catch up with you all next week.